Today, we're talking about a topic that's toppled many of us, and that is getting divorced. When you're doing it tough emotionally after a divorce, adding financial pressure on top is a real backbreaker. And I'm talking today about a letter written to me by Mark, who tells me he's 54, he's gone through a divorce, she's kept the house, he's taken half the value and half of the retirement savings, and he's living in a small unit. But he's sad because he doesn't see his kids as much. On top of that, he's working, paying the rent on the apartment and also paying child support. So his life is financially pretty tough. So to help Mark and so many of us out there who are in this situation think differently about their financial future, I've brought in an expert financial advisor, Andrea Elmargi, who's going to talk about Mark's situation and how he could think differently to have the future that he wants be bright. So, Andrea, thank you for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.
How common is it for men to be going through this situation where they're paying for child support and another place and looking at what can they do with their future? You know, it's quite different than they planned.
Look, it is very common, as you know. A lot of marriages end up with divorce. A lot of marriages getting close in their 50s. Their kids have moved out and couples are trying to find the purpose again. So yeah, we do see that, whether it's the man or the woman coming in, there's this change of dynamics in the way they manage their finances. So it is a good conversation to have early, even before the divorce.
If you're thinking about getting divorced, is that when you come and see someone like you more than when you're pulling the trigger?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
The impact of going through a divorce without seeking advice, whether it's financial advice or tax advice, legal advice, of course, and a massive impact on the outcome and how what assets gets distributed throughout that divorce.
Well, a lot of the time everyone's focused on the lawyer in a divorce. You know, it's the lawyer, but a financial advisor is really someone who can look at your overall picture of where you want to go next, right?
We're actually planning forward and looking at, well, what going forward, how's that going to impact that individual financially? When the divorce takes place, you'll find a person that is really disadvantaged financially or understanding their financial circumstances. I tend to ask who's the Minister of Finance in that relationship, and the person who wasn't the Minister of Finance are overwhelmed with the decisions they have to make going forward.
One of the things Mark said in his letter, and I think it's something particularly in Australia that's challenging, is should he buy another house? I mean, he got half the house in value, but he can't afford to buy another house outright, but he wants his kids to come and visit him who are teenagers. I mean, is buying a property the best thing for someone like Mark in that situation?
In Mark's situation, he's got teenage children, and what you need to consider is that those teenage children will no longer be teenagers in a few years.
And then they dump you quickly, right?
Absolutely. So his situation, if we look at beyond the current situation and plan for his retirement, you've got to factor that in, that whatever he's thinking of purchasing today might not be his need in the future. So the conversation I would like to have with Mark is the property that you're looking at today and what you think is your ideal situation. Is that going to be the same property that you will need in 5 years or 7 years?
It's only 5 years when you've got teenagers, really, isn't it? 5 or 7, yeah. But it's hard when you're in that position at the time and you've gone from being in a home and you want another home and you want your kids to come to your home. I can see why he's thinking about it, right?
It's about balancing out cash flow and wants and needs. So it's nice to have a nice big home that you own it. And the question is, does he really own it or the bank owns it with him? And in 5 years' time, he will be staring down the barrel of downsizing. So that's at a pretty expensive rent he paid to the bank for something that he's going to downsize. When you do buy a property, you need to be thinking long term. You need to be thinking 7 years plus to get your value out of your property.
Okay. So really, Mark needs to probably sit back and not just think about, I want to be with my kids, but because long-term kids need you for money and everything else for a long time. They may dump you as in want to hang out with you, but they don't dump you as far as those commitments. So maybe it is the opportunity for him to think about designing his life and If he has got that lump sum and can rent, maybe he has got a bit more money to take the kids on holiday.
Spot on. What's the use of having a big castle, a home that for the family and kids, but you cannot enjoy it?
But what's something he could be doing now, and those watching who are going through this situation, just to start the road back to getting some sort of view of financial security, or at least a financial plan of where he's going?
So the earlier he starts, get clarity on his goals, set realistic expectations.
So be realistic. That's the word. I hated that as a child. Be realistic, Vanessa. I was like, but it's the right word to use, isn't it? On those goals of, okay, I wanted to retire at 65, but reality is it's probably going to be more like 70 now.
Absolutely. And working with a financial planner, we will go through the current reality, understanding what's the current savings at the moment, how much can they afford to save. Once we know all that, we'll be able to give him a projection what retirement can look like. And whether he's happy with that or not, we can adjust the sales to get him to where he needs to be. And if we can't get him there, we need to set the right expectations. I do have a story of a gentleman who's been married for 27 years. Went through the divorce process. Unfortunately, what was left with would not get him to where he needs to be in his retirement. The conversation was around, how do we boost your retirement savings? You've got limited time. So the conversation had really gave him comfort, going, well, you're going to be okay, because what we're going to do, we're going to save and boost your retirement savings through tax-effective strategies, minimize tax as we can while you're still working. At some stage, you're going to receive an inheritance. We know that, parents are still alive, but there'll be an inheritance coming your way. And that will really change the dynamics of what your retirement will look like.
I guess what every one of us wants is certainty, right? And that's a story of uncertainty to certainty as far as I'm going to be okay, which is what everyone wants to know. Andrea, thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Vanessa.